Welcome back to Barely on Fire. I'm Andrew,
And I'm Stephanie.
and this week we'll tell you about our trip out to the desert on BLM land and our impressions of boondocking for the first time.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay, and so in this last 9-day stint, one of which we went back to Andrew's grandparents' house, which we're staying on their property, the first portion, we actually spent Christmas in the desert, and I'll show you photos of the stars and the fires. Then we went back, emptied our tanks, filled up our water tanks, came back out, and we were in California for New Year's Eve. We figured since we can't really gather with all our family members, we'd think about not how sad it was that things couldn't be the same, but how exciting it was that we could make things really, really different. Andrew?
All right, so now for the 4 things we learned about our first boondocking experience.
Huge thanks to Andrew's grandparents, Ken and Mary Hoadley, for showing us the ropes of boondocking and making sure we looked this happy Christmas morning while boondocking. All right, tip number 1. When you're getting ready to go boondocking, scouting out what site you want is really important for a number of reasons. You'll want to ensure that there's somewhere that has level ground so you can be as level as possible without having to use too many chocks under your tires. 2, you're going to want to think about where could you set up a fire pit. If you're with other people, how many RVs can you fit on the spot that you're at? And are there other folks around you that might have generators that cause noise, or other considerations like if you have a pet. So with the 2 locations that we were at in the last 8 of 9 nights, we scouted out the locations in advance and took those things into consideration.
And make sure that when you're looking for your site, you go ahead in a different vehicle other than your RV, so that you can make sure that there's no obstacles in the way where you might bottom out, or you might drag your hitch like we might or might not have done once.
Just a little bit.
Just so that you don't damage the underside of your vehicle.
Yeah.
Bear taking in the views of the Yuma foothills on our first night on the Arizona Land Trust land. Our Christmas evening fire. Our decorations, if you can call them that. And the beautiful stars. It was really incredible.
All right, tip number 2 is making sure that you have all the permits that you need in order to stay on the land that you want to go to. So the first 3 nights we stayed on some land through the Arizona Land Trust. And in order to do that, we looked online and we found out that in order to stay there, it was $20 for the year. Pretty good deal, $20 for the year. And it comes in handy when you're relaxing in front of your RV and all of a sudden the sheriffs may or may not come by.
2 sheriff's trucks pulled right up to our RVs.
Hey, how you doing, guys? What ended up happening was someone that was living a couple hundred yards behind where we were camping had complained that we were obstructing the view. So the sheriffs had to come over, just see how things were going, and when they asked for our permits, had them in hand, and they said, "Oh my goodness, this is the first time we've seen anyone with permits out here. Have yourselves a great day," and then they left.
It was wonderfully anticlimactic, and they were really kind.
Yeah.
They were just so glad we had permits so they didn't have to make us move, which was awesome.
Woo!
Here's a sign saying that permits are required. We were literally flying a kite when the police showed up, which I thought was a really hilarious image. Us crazy Vermonters flying kites.
So in regards to permitting,
For the last 3 nights, we've come over to California. We're staying at the Imperial Dam, and this is on BLM land. The only stipulation here is that it's so popular for long-term visitors that they have more accommodations than you'd normally have. They have potable water, they have a dump station, and in order to stay here for the year, it's something like $150.
I think it's 180 for the year.
180 for the year. Or if you want to get the permit where you can stay for 2 weeks in each site at a time, it's something like $75. But that restricts which areas you can stay. Like down here, we're by the lake. You can't stay on the lake for the whole summer because for the whole winter, because that would be taking up a prime spot that more people might be able to enjoy if they're only here for the weekend. Make sure you know your permits.
Yeah, or the cops will get you.
Or the cops will get you.
Something that they do in Yuma every month on the full moon, and they call it Howling at the Moon. So while we were in the desert in Arizona, we, from afar, participated in this event where people come, they bring little fire pits, they bring camping chairs, they bring food. There's a couple food trucks and a stage with a band, and they have like just live music for a couple hours. And then once the full moon comes up over the mountains, everybody howls at it all together. And it was such a cool thing to have like 300, 400 people just all howling at the moon. And we were in our RVs like maybe 200 feet behind everything, so we were pretty separate from the event, so we felt really safe about it. But they do it every month, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah, and so the first few days we had spent on the land trust land, and then I think it was the night beforehand, in anticipation of Howling at the Moon, moved the RVs as close as we could safely, and while still keeping distance from like the main group, just for the virus sake. But it was wonderful.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. So I guess that means we've had 4 sites total over the 8 days. So we've really gotten to see kind of a lot of the area around us, and we look forward to doing more of it. Boondocking is not as hard as I expected. I will say that.
No, not at all. And I think that it has a lot more benefits than I originally had thought. I mean, we've already paid we paid for the $75 so that you can stay in a place 2 weeks at a time, because we don't anticipate being in one spot for, I don't even think, 2 weeks.
Well, it was Christmas gifted to us.
Christmas gifted to us.
By Andrew's grandparents, thank you.
Right. I mean, there's no one-day pass unless you want to pay $10 at a time. Anyways, but it was so nice to just pick your spot. And I believe this area is 10,000 acres.
Yeah.
This BLM area. It was just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So here we'll show you a couple photos and videos from Howling at the Moon. There's the wolf that leads you to the Howling at the Moon event. This is a view of the sun setting and the other vehicles and folks that were there for the event. There's the stage back there. And then the moon's about to come up just over that mountain range. Here's a time lapse of the moon coming up. Sorry I don't have audio of us all howling. We were too busy howling that we didn't think to record it. But it was really cool to hear everybody howling at the moon as it came over this mountain range all together. After 3 nights on Arizona Land Trust land, we packed up and headed over to the BLM, Bureau of Land Management land.
How's that look?
Good enough.
Good.
This was our rowdy New Year's Eve bunch and our fire at the end of the evening at our first BLM site. The second site we had was down at the bottom of this
road here, you'll see video of Andrew's grandparents' RV coming in, and then our RV coming in just behind it.
So tip number 3 is to manage your water appropriately. Keep an eye on your water tanks, how much you're using for things like dishes, things like showering, things like filling up water bottles or making coffee, because you don't want to run out of water while you're, in the desert if there's nowhere convenient to fill up. And depending on what land you're on, there might be fill stations. So like the land that we're currently on in California near Senator's Wash in the Imperial Dam, just up the hill, there's a place where you can dump out your black tank and your gray tank, and you can also fill up water. But the last place we were staying at, there was nowhere nearby to do so. So we had to be pretty mindful of how long it would take us. And we were just kind of getting to know how many days we could go on our tank of water, which I believe is 40 gallons.
Right. So, so water's probably the most important thing that you have, and when you run out, then your trip's just done, and you have to fill up before you can do anything else.
Yeah. So that's the one thing we found as like a limiting factor. We can stay out for X amount of days until the water runs out.
Mm-hmm.
Most other things you can get by without, but not water.
And I think what we use the most water for right now is dishes. So we're trying to change the way that we do it. We have a basin and all that we need to start using more often. And I think that we could probably extend maybe 4 or 5 days at a time.
Yeah. And if we got like separate gallon, like 5-gallon jugs, that might be helpful too. At first we were like, oh, let's use this basin when we do dishes so that we don't put extra water in the gray tank and have that fill up. But it wasn't that wasn't the first thing that happened. We ran out of water before our tanks filled up. So
well, and then when you think about it, your gray and black tanks are going to fill up before your water ends, because if you have a 40-gallon freshwater tank and a 40-gallon gray water tank and black water tank, it's not possible to overflow your gray tank if you emptied before you went out.
Yep. Cool. On to the next tip. All right, tip number 4, power management. So the way our RV works is that we have to turn the RV on to turn on the generator. When the generator isn't on and we're not hooked up to power, the only things that we can use are our lights, and we can plug one device into the cab of the RV.
Cigarette lighter.
The cigarette lighter, yeah. So in order to, say, charge our phones, charge a laptop or something, we need to have the generator on or be hooked up to power. So when we're boondocking, we tried to be really mindful of how long we had the generator on, one for gas use, one for noise. And so generally, I think probably each day we maybe turned it on for 2 hours.
Yeah, we would go the whole day without using much of any power, and then the problems where we would run into were at night. So we would end up running our generator for a couple hours at night to relax, watch some TV, and then that's when we would charge laptops, cell phones, and everything that we'd need for the following day. But sometimes the battery that we had on board would be drained by the time we woke up in the morning, and we'd have a cold RV. So this is still something that we're working on, and hopefully in the future either we'll expand our battery bank or we'll get solar or a combination of
Sorry, I couldn't
the
stop.
two.
But I think it was only one night that the heat turned off, and it wasn't that bad, right?
It was 2 nights. Last night last night was quite cold over here in the desert. I think it must have been 40.
Yeah, but a couple of the first nights, one thing we had done is Andrew's grandparents have a little solar panel, and we've hooked that up to our battery during the day. So if we had done that, we maybe could have avoided a little bit.
Maybe, yeah.
Or the 2 nights where the battery did die.
We're still learning.
We're still learning, but it actually, I was surprised how it didn't feel that inconvenient
No.
to just only need power for those 2 hours, because we just knew that, okay, at this time, we'll just charge everything. And once it was charged, we're fine until the next day. So it really wasn't that big of a deal.
If you're spending time out here in places as beautiful as this, what do you need power in your RV for all that often other than just keeping you warm at night?
Yeah, cool.
Speaking of night, the stars were gorgeous, and I've included a few photos of the stars. I think you can kind of see them, but they do not do the sky justice at all.
There's so much to do while you're on BLM land. There's so much hiking. There's plenty to go mountain biking, which ties us in to our viewer question of the week. Can you fish on BLM land? And the answer is yes. So over here at Imperial Dam, there's some postings out there saying that they'll honor both Arizona and California fishing licenses. You still have to follow the state's fishing laws, but yes, you can go fishing.
Yeah, and I think within this 10,000 acre land, there's at least 2 different places you can fish. There's the body of water behind us, and then there's the other side of the dam, what is that called?
I'm not sure what that other one is, but there's also closer to home, Mitri Lake, and then there's also closer to us right now, Squaw Lake.
Yes, that's the one I was talking about. Yes. Cool.
Bring your fishing poles.
Yeah, and I'll put in a couple photos because Andrew fished a little bit this morning and either yesterday or the day before. No luck here, but we'll keep trying.
Any time on the water is not wasted time.
Yes. Cool. Well, keep the questions coming. Thank you so much. We love you. So that might have been a little forward. Happy New Year.
Oh, you're still recording. Yeah, Happy New Year.
Andrew getting in some fishing, and then off to his right is a view of Castle Dome, which was really gorgeous. The next photo is a view from the top of the hill of the campsite.
So if you have other questions about boondocking, ask this bro right here. No, I'm just kidding. Please let us know in the comments, email us, text us, whatever. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have that we haven't already answered.
Yeah, remember, put those questions down below. You could be the viewer question of the week. Ooh.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
See you soon.
Shout out to Grow and Fell Meadery for these sweet cups. Like and subscribe.
Comment below.
Just like and subscribe.
Hit the notification bell so you're notified.
Did you tell them that they should like and subscribe?
I think you did.
All right, I did mention that.